She stood still, stone-faced, hoodie drawn tight, eyes locked forward. The gate agent's hand was raised in protest, her face twisted with assumption. Behind them, the word "gate" glowed in yellow, ironically symbolic. Security hovered in the background, ready to escalate. But then the twist came. Without flinching, the young woman lifted a black leather wallet. Inside gleamed the gold badge of the FBI, sharp under the terminal lights. The moment froze. Judgments shattered. And what they thought was just another passenger was the storm they never saw coming. At Gate 47B of Terminal C, the crowd was restless. The overhead announcements droned in cycles, interrupted only by the occasional mechanical shuffle of suitcases and the sighs of impatient travelers. Among them stood a young black woman with braids tied back neatly, a faded gray hoodie, and a worn canvas duffel clutched under one arm. Her eyes scanned the crowd without moving her head. She wasn't early, and she wasn't late. She was perfectly timed. The crew at the gate watched her approach with visible stiffness. Their posture changed as soon as she neared the boarding zone. The line was moving, but her presence seemed to slow it down. She didn't speak, didn't make a scene. She handed over her boarding pass as expected, but the air shifted. The staff member in charge paused deliberately. Her gaze dropped to the woman's sneakers, then up to her face, and something unspoken passed between them. Without a word, the woman was motioned to stand aside, and the boarding process continued as though she'd vanished. Travelers flowed around her like water past a stone. She remained still, her face unreadable, her breath even. It wasn't the first time she'd been profiled, and it likely wouldn't be the last, but today was not the day for quiet tolerance. Security was summoned. 2 uniformed airport guards walked in with slow confidence, the kind born of routine rather than urgency. They flanked her like she was already guilty. Still, she said nothing. One made a motion toward her bag, and she gave a slight shake of the head. That was the moment things shifted. With practiced motion, she pulled a slim, metallic wallet from inside her hoodie. She flipped it open, not toward herself, but at chest level, squarely between the guards' line of sight. What they saw turned their smugness to stillness. The woman, standing silently in the middle of Gate 47B, was not a stranded college student, nor a fashionably underdressed civilian. She was a federal agent. More specifically, she was embedded within a classified division of the FBI's counterterrorism task force authorized to operate undercover in any civilian environment. The guards hesitated, eyes darting from her badge to each other, calculating what else they had just missed. Behind them, the gate crew still didn't move, oblivious. The travelers boarding the flight had no idea they were watching an operation unfold in real time. For days, intelligence reports had flagged the flight as high risk, though not for public knowledge. Surveillance had picked up chatter about a courier, a drop, and a potential hijack scenario. The suspect was believed to be hiding among the priority boarders, and the agent they'd just denied boarding was the embedded response team. Protocol dictated that she remain undisclosed unless imminent danger presented itself. Being blocked from boarding triggered a classified override sequence. She gave no warning, only moved with deliberate speed. Her next action was smooth and unquestionable. She stepped past the gate crew, ducked behind a pillar, and within seconds began relaying signals through a secured earpiece. She wasn't alone. She was never alone. Her team was watching through every available feed, CCTV, satellite, and local surveillance. From their van 3 levels below the terminal, her support unit rerouted gate access and triggered a silent lockdown on the flight's manifest. Names began to vanish from the crew's check-in list one by one. Within minutes, the system had purged 2 alias identities belonging to flagged individuals. The boarding pass readers started failing. Confusion rippled. Passengers began to get anxious, unaware of what the interruption meant. A man in a blue blazer tried to push past the scanner again and again. The agent had eyes on him. His movements matched those flagged in the initial report. He'd arrived without luggage, wore business attire, and displayed minor tremors under stress. He was also carrying a watch, an outdated model, often used to disguise compact ignition devices. Another alert came through. A secondary suspect had just entered the boarding tunnel, bypassing final inspection with forged airline credentials. Her team relayed his photo to her smartwatch. She memorized the face within seconds. She was moving now, silent and efficient, bypassing panicked gate agents without pause. Security systems within the terminal were locked in a loop, on purpose. Her team had temporarily frozen the TSA checkpoint cameras and overridden staff radio. She was the only authorized authority in the field. The rest were just crowd control. Back in the boarding tunnel, the man in the blazer had begun tapping his foot rapidly. 3 beats, then pause, then 2 quick taps. It matched a coded signal from an intercepted message days ago. Confirmation. As he approached his row, the overhead cabin bins rattled slightly. Something was placed above the middle seats. The agent boarded behind him, silent, unnoticed by the panicking airline staff now realizing a deeper situation had erupted. She made her way down the aisle as if she belonged there. Tension was a language she understood fluently. Her presence, in the narrow tube of recycled air and nylon seats, shifted something primal in the man ahead of her. He turned slightly, making eye contact for the briefest second. It was enough. He knew, but it was too late. She moved without warning, first disabling the makeshift trigger device, then subduing the suspect with a rapid sequence of pressure strikes. She had him cuffed and unconscious before most of the passengers realized someone had even stood up. Outside the plane, agents in plain clothes began to flood the gate area. The terminal's status changed from delayed to under review. Travelers were told nothing, just herded to other gates while murmurs of technical issues drifted through the air. But within the command van, a different conversation was unfolding. The woman in the hoodie, the one who had been profiled and sidelined, was filing her field report silently, tapping her notes into a hardened tablet. One more operation complete. One more mission buried under civilian misunderstanding. She didn't look back as she exited the jet bridge. She didn't need validation. She was already being briefed on the next flight. The morning after the airport takedown, Washington, D.C. was already humming with bureaucratic tension. Inside a quiet, windowless room beneath a secure government building, the agent stood before a black glass panel as encrypted footage from Gate 47B played in silence. Every motion from the previous day was analyzed. Her pause at the gate, the tactical move past security, the swift incapacitation inside the aircraft. Her report was precise. No drama, just timestamps and facts. But beyond that data, something deeper resonated. A silent commentary on perception, authority, and the cost of being underestimated. The operation had been successful. 2 men were now in custody, their identities linked to a growing web of international sabotage efforts. One of them had trained in a known militia camp near the northern Afghan border. The other held 3 fake passports and had planned to detonate, a chemical agent disguised within a faux energy drink. The device had been buried in the overhead bin, programmed to release under specific cabin pressure. A minor drop in altitude could have triggered it. The agent, known to her handlers as Echo 5, had foiled what could have been a catastrophic mass casualty event. But there would be no press release, no medal. The mission was buried under a classified label and locked inside the Bureau's high-security system. To the world, the flight had simply experienced a technical anomaly. By mid-afternoon, Echo 5 was already flying again, this time in first class. Not as a perk, but because her next identity required it. She was now Lena Bryant, a luxury brand consultant en route to Chicago for a product launch. Her cover was deep, fabricated social, media accounts, fake credit history, even a fabricated college roommate who could vouch for her. The life she wore was as seamless as her real one was invisible. She sat by the window, champagne untouched, eyes fixed on the clouds beyond. Around her, executives traded inflated words about quarterly performance and artificial intelligence. None of them realized the woman with a leather notebook and diamond-cut nails could dismantle a handgun in 11 seconds, or wiretap a phone with a lipstick-sized transmitter. Below her, in a nondescript safe house in Maryland, analysts sorted through the debris from the previous mission. Inside the captured suspect's luggage were blueprints for terminal layouts, security back doors, and details of a second operation. This one not on a plane, but at a high-profile tech conference happening in 3 days in downtown Chicago. The Bureau didn't waste time. They sent Echo 5 because she could blend, adapt, vanish. Her skin, her gender, her youth, assets in a world where power never looked like her, which is exactly why she succeeded. The enemy never saw her coming. By the time her plane landed, she had memorized a new layout of the target building, its maintenance routes, back exits, and ventilation shafts. Her role at the conference was simple: attend a rooftop cocktail party and monitor 6 key figures. One of them, Intel suggested, was being targeted by a hired mercenary group posing as startup investors. Back in the field, she didn't carry a gun. Not always. That was the thing about her. Her deadliest weapon was unpredictability. While others planned around force, she moved with purpose, clean, cold, and unhesitating. When the pressure rose, she didn't shout, didn't freeze. She calculated. And when she moved, she ended things. At the Chicago hotel, Echo 5 checked, in under her alias. The doorman smiled without recognition, the receptionist offered her spa services, and the bellhop barely made eye contact. No one noticed the micro-antenna woven into the lining of her clutch or the infrared scanner hidden in her necklace pendant. She swept her room, placed 2 motion detectors near the entry, and inserted a jammer into the smoke detector to prevent remote surveillance. The evening came fast. She wore a simple black dress with pointed heels, elegant but unobtrusive. Her braided hair was pinned tightly back and a small transmitter buzzed once in her earring. Green light. Mission active. On the rooftop, strings of warm fairy lights and lazy jazz created an ambiance of careless luxury. Guests sipped rosé and nibbled on imported cheeses while talking tech valuations and exit strategies. But beneath that glittering layer, Echo 5 saw movements that didn't match the setting. Hands. Too still, eyes that scanned too often, shoes too tactical. There were 3. 2 men, 1 woman. Their faces didn't match the guest list, but they carried the exact posture she had trained against. One had a pin-sized scar beneath his right ear, typical of men trained in close-quarters combat, a nerve reduction procedure, to increase pain tolerance. The second had a delayed blink rate, often seen in those accustomed to low-light surveillance. The woman carried a purse too bulky for her frame and wore flat shoes while dressed like everyone else in heels. Echo 5 moved among them without contact, logging details with each step. A waiter passed and she lifted a glass, not to drink, but to use its reflection to confirm positioning. Her earpiece pulsed again. The target, a tech CEO with government contracts, was approaching the central garden. The moment was coming. At exactly 8:12 p.m., she stepped into the space between the CEO and the disguised woman. She dropped her clutch deliberately. In the seconds it took to bend, pivot, and rise, she slipped a jamming disc under the table and pushed a proximity sensor into the nearby planter. Her next 5 steps triggered everything. The woman moved for her purse, the man with the scar signaled something unseen, and the third reached for a concealed object under his sleeve. But Echo 5 was already mid-turn. Her left heel dropped hard, triggering the clasp on her clutch to spring open. From it, a dense smoke pellet ignited and bloomed into a white mist that cloaked half the rooftop. Within the confusion, she disarmed the woman in 3 motions, redirecting a suppressed dart gun into the floor. The second suspect lunged toward the CEO, but a concealed taser rigged in Echo 5's dress hem incapacitated him on contact. The third, too slow to act, was intercepted by rooftop security, already alerted by her silent signal through the jammer. B. The time the mist cleared, the guests were coughing and confused. The mission was secured, and the 3 suspects were on their knees, zip-tied and disarmed. Echo 5 walked past the chaos with her clutch closed once again, disappearing into the elevator before the first camera could catch a clean frame. No name, no face, just silence. The hotel rooftop incident rippled through federal channels like a silent explosion, powerful but hidden from public view. 3 suspects in custody, a civilian VIP unharmed, and a chemical microdart weapon intercepted before deployment. The media got none of it. Local news ran a harmless story about a gas leak evacuation during a startup event. No names, no faces, no arrests. But inside the agency, Echo 5's file got heavier. She didn't return to headquarters. She never did after field operations. Instead, she vanished, intentionally erased from commercial records, flight manifests, and camera footage. Her next stop was an airfield outside Louisville, where an unmarked black van waited with the next set of papers and a clean alias. Her mission hadn't ended. It had evolved. Inside the van, a cold case file lay open across a table. At the top, a name, a sketch, and a code name, Kingmaker. He had eluded intelligence agencies for over 9 years. A master at grooming. Others to carry out his chaos. He never appeared in person, never handled weapons directly. He recruited, trained, and then disappeared behind the mess he orchestrated. Most believed he was a myth, but in Chicago, a trace had surfaced. One of the rooftop operatives, under chemical sedation, had uttered a phrase, "Kingmaker says we don't miss again." The line matched intercepted chatter from 5 years ago during a failed embassy hit in Istanbul. Echo 5 had never faced Kingmaker directly. Few had, but now the threads were aligning. 2 continents, 3 different identities, all leading to one convergence point, New York City. Her new alias was tailored to blend into a data intelligence symposium scheduled at the Javits Center. Kingmaker's suspected lieutenant was slated to be there, speaking under a forged identity. Her job was to intercept, confirm, and neutralize, quietly if possible. She traveled under the name Kendra Vaughn, a cybersecurity analyst with high-level clearance. Her fabricated background included a dozen staged interviews, fake publications, and even a ghost-written thesis on predictive threat algorithms. Every detail reinforced her existence. She arrived at the venue ahead of schedule, dressed in charcoal gray slacks, a high-collared blouse, and wireframe glasses. Her hair was straightened and pulled into a tight bun. She looked every bit the overqualified tech specialist who didn't want to talk to anyone, and it worked. Inside the symposium, thousands of bodies moved with choreographed purpose. Lanyards dangled, badges clicked. Every 20 feet, a security officer stood watch, but most were looking for cyber threats, not human ones. That was her advantage. She wasn't in the system. She was the system. Her target was speaking at a panel in room 408. He used the name Julien Matisse and posed as a French-Israeli encryption expert. His face matched a blurred surveillance capture from Istanbul. Aged but unmistakable. Kingmaker's inner circle didn't recruit new faces. They recycled the loyal ones. Echo 5 entered room 408 as a passive observer, sitting in the last row. She held a faux coffee cup with a scanner embedded in the sleeve. As he spoke about global data decentralization, she mapped his vocal signature and cross-referenced it in real time through a hidden transmitter tucked inside her bra strap. The match was confirmed in under 30 seconds. He didn't notice her. No one ever did. Once the panel ended, she followed him at a distance, not tailing, just existing in parallel. She timed her steps with his. She mimicked the rhythm of an uninterested attendee walking nowhere in particular. Her window came in the parking garage beneath the convention center. He entered alone, his phone glowing in his hand, head slightly tilted. The shadows there were long and uneven. She approached from the opposite row of vehicles, heels quiet on the concrete, movements fluid. She didn't draw a weapon. She didn't need to. When he reached for his car, she slipped beside the passenger side mirror and launched a signal-disrupting flare. His phone died instantly. He paused, turned, saw only her shadow. She activated a near-field pulse device from her bracelet, freezing his car locks and camera systems. In a single move, she pressed his own key fob against the biometric reader hidden in her belt. A download started instantly. Contacts, encrypted texts, location history. It all transferred. He noticed her too late. She stepped into the light fully. For just a second, long enough for him to realize who she was, or more terrifying, what. But before he could speak, she was gone again, slipping into the concrete lattice of the garage's architecture, disappearing like a draft of air. She didn't kill him. That wasn't the assignment. What she needed was already downloaded. And what she found was worse than expected. Inside his encrypted files were time-stamped messages referencing a red sky operation scheduled for 72 hours later. Target, Boston, during the Global Education Summit at the Downtown Convention Center. The attack would involve coordinated drone swarms, facial targeting systems, and digital jamming capable of blinding all emergency services. The plan was brilliant. Ruthless. Kingmaker's fingerprints were all over it. Her next transmission, too. The Bureau was silent and contained only coordinates and the phrase, "Initiate Phase 0." That code hadn't been used in 6 years. It meant all other operations were to halt. Resources would be diverted. All eyes now pointed toward Boston. She boarded a private agency plane within the hour. Alone. No visible luggage. No backup. In her seat, she reviewed aerial maps of Boston's downtown core, marked with potential launch zones for the drones, garbage trucks, food carts, roof access points. Every blind spot became a red square. She knew what Kingmaker wanted. Mass panic. Precision chaos. But he didn't know she was coming, and this time she wouldn't be just intercepting a mission. She would be ending a war. Boston simmered under the hum of progress. The skyline reflected off the harbor like polished steel, and the streets near the convention center buzzed with traffic, news vans, and police barriers. The Global Education Summit had drawn presidents, CEOs, activists, and royals. Cameras clicked. Crowds gathered. The city moved like a breathing organism, vulnerable and unaware. But high above, on rooftops and hidden behind tinted windows, shadows had already taken position. The threat wasn't loud or theatrical. It was engineered to be invisible until impact. That was Kingmaker's method. No fireworks, no slogans. Just silence, followed by ruin. In a decommissioned subway tunnel beneath South Station, Echo 5 stood alone in a cold command center of blinking monitors and thick cables. Her mission was no longer covert. It was surgical. She had been granted autonomous control over a joint agency counterterrorism operation, with full tactical freedom. Her orders: locate, disable, and extract. If extraction failed, neutralize. The Red Sky operation had multiple launch nodes, each disguised within innocuous public zones, one in a recycling truck marked for green waste, another hidden in a delivery drone's logistics hub, and the third inside the air duct system of the convention center itself. The complexity wasn't just in their locations, but in the fact that they were synchronized. If one node was disrupted too early, the others would auto-activate. She had to hit them all, simultaneously. At 4:33 a.m., she exited the tunnel wearing a city maintenance vest and utility gloves. Her identity was buried under 9 layers of encryption. Her face didn't show up on facial recognition. Her heartbeat didn't register on biometric sweepers. She wasn't there. Not officially. The first target was the green waste truck parked just 2 blocks from the venue. Inside its bin, nested under cardboard and crushed soda cans, lay a swarm of hexagonal drone modules, each coded with facial ID targeting protocols. Designed to fly in coordinated bursts, they could lock on to specific people using real-time database access, an assassination network masquerading as recycling. Echo 5 approached the truck like a worker on routine duty, inserted a jammer into the tailgate interface, and initiated a false diagnostics check. In 12 seconds, she had the targeting firmware cloned. In 19, she had the primary hub disabled. A tracking chip embedded in her glove transmitted the coordinates to 2 snipers perched in adjacent buildings, who would obliterate the node with clean shots once she cleared the perimeter. She was already gone before the truck's onboard systems began to overheat. The second location was the drone logistics hub near Fort Point, a plain warehouse from the outside, but its signal output revealed a spiderweb of activity, low-frequency pings, multiple encrypted control paths. Inside were autonomous drones disguised as medical supplies. Echo 5 climbed the fire escape at the back and entered through a maintenance vent, her body pressed tight against the steel duct. Her landing was silent, her pace rhythmic. She made it to the control panel, attached a pulse dampener, and rewrote the firmware to delay ignition. She didn't destroy it. She needed the false signal active, just long enough to redirect Kingmaker's eyes. From her wrist device, she spoofed the countdown, making it appear the drones were charging for activation. That gave her 7 minutes to reach the primary node. She ran, through alleys, over stairwells, across empty streets that hadn't yet stirred awake. Her lungs burned, her vision tunneled. She was fast, but more importantly, she was precise. Every corner was memorized, every obstacle pre-mapped. She reached the convention center through a staff entrance, still disguised in the orange vest, and slipped past a janitor with headphones in. Inside the central HVAC shaft, just above the grand hall, was the final nest. This one wasn't just a launch node. It was the core, the brain. The others fed off its signal. If this one survived, so would the others. If she failed here, everything would unravel. She climbed the shaft using magnetic grips, her back pressed against the metal. Sweat dripped along her spine. Her breath measured. The air was dry, buzzing with silent code. The moment she reached the central module, her instincts stopped her. There was a trap. Kingmaker had anticipated an intervention. A thermal scan plate was mounted below the node. Any fluctuation in body temperature would trigger an automatic detonation, turning the entire duct system into a furnace. She didn't move. Her options narrowed fast. She could deactivate the node from below, but only if she could freeze her heat signature. She had one option left. She exhaled slowly, reached into her belt pouch, and pulled out a rapid coolant pack. Snapping it, she smeared the gel across her gloves, neck, and chest. Her skin began to sting as the temperature dropped below safe limits. Frost lined her collar. She counted to 3. Moved once, cut the thermal wire in one motion, and everything went dark. The detonation was canceled. The node went limp. Echo 5 clung to the shaft, teeth gritted, arms trembling. It was over. From her earpiece, a single chime confirmed. All nodes inactive. Threat neutralized. Outside, the world continued to spin. The summit began. Delegates walked through metal detectors unaware that hours earlier they were seconds from death. News outlets focused on keynote speeches and startup showcases. No one spoke of drones or bombs or the war that had been fought in their silence. Hours later, she stood on a subway platform in a clean sweater and jeans, duffel slung over her shoulder. No badge, no gear, just a woman waiting for a train. Around her, the city moved casually, oblivious to the black file folders now sitting in a vault somewhere under D. Hiroshi, marked Incident Contained. She boarded the train. She sat by the window. She vanished into the crowd, and somewhere in a dark room, a man called Kingmaker realized too late. He hadn't lost to a system, or a team, or a mistake. He had lost to the one person he hadn't seen coming. A girl they'd stopped at an airport. A girl they thought didn't belong. A ghost in sneakers. A quiet storm in plain sight.